Maybe you're brand new to the Pokemon trading card game, or maybe you're coming back now that you found out that League Cups are finally returning for the 2023 season, and you need to build a deck but don't know how to start. Hey, Nick from 9Card TCG, and today we're going to be going over some of the core principles behind deck building. This is going to be a beginner's guide. It's just kind of to help you get started in building a deck, and it's also going to assume that you know how to play the game. It's really important that you understand the basics of the rules and like how cards in the TCG function, like what a basic Pokemon is, what a trainer is, supporter, and if you don't, that's okay. I have a video for you that talks about all that kind of stuff. But before we get into the actual video, if you haven't already, do me a favor, like, subscribe, comment, all that kind of stuff. Tells YouTube this is a good channel and other people should watch it. We're going to break this video up into a few different sections, so all the links and timestamps are in the video description, so please go check it out if you want to look at a particular segment, or you just want to go back and refresh your memory. And with that said, let's just get started. The first thing we have to discuss are the 4 rules of deck building. These aren't like the 4 things you should do. Like, these are the 4 absolute things that you have to have in your deck. The first one is that you have to have exactly 60 cards. No more, no less. It is worth noting that in a tournament, you cannot change any of the cards in your deck, so make sure you know it really well. The second rule is that you must have at least 1 basic Pokemon. You're gonna have more, but the rules require you to have a minimum of 1. You can't start the game without a basic Pokemon in the active. The third rule is that you can have a maximum of 4 copies of any particular card that has the same name. For example, Inteleon, there's multiple versions of Inteleon, but Inteleon is not the same as Inteleon V, and Inteleon V is not the same as Inteleon V Max. So we could, in theory, have 4 Inteleon V, and 4 Inteleon V Max. However, if you take a look at something like this Regidrago, you can't have 4 of this Regidrago and 4 of this Regidrago because the name Regidrago is the same on both cards. So you can use 4 in any combination of those. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. The fourth and final rule is that we are restricted to a single Radiant Pokemon for the entire deck. And this rule might change as Radiant Pokemon come out of rotation and we're not allowed to use them anymore, but the cards literally says you can have 1 Radiant Pokemon per deck. So it's not 1 Radiant of the same name, it's a single Radiant for the entire deck. So make sure you choose that one carefully. It is worth noting that we are not limited to a certain number of each card type. Again, we're limited to 4 of each card, but not card type. So if I wanted to build a deck with just like 2 basic Pokemon and 58 energies, but no trainers or whatever, I could. The deck would be bad, but I could do it. So now that we know the rules of deck building, where do we actually start? Well, the easy answer is Limitless TCG. Limitless is a great site, and again, I have the link in the video description. It's a great place to get started. You can look at just what decks people are playing by using this deck tab, and then we can go ahead and see. I like to split into their variants just so I get a better idea of the stuff that's being played a little bit more specifically. So from here, we can really see all of the different cards and decks that are being played, and right now we see that this deck, Lugia Archeops, has a share of 36.7%, meaning a lot of people are playing Lugia. Over a third of decks in tournaments are Lugia decks. It's an insane number, and usually things don't get that high. But right now, it's a whole thing. But anyway, we can start by doing one of 2 things. We can say, oh man, Lugia earned the most points in this 3-month period. So you can see time past 3 months, and we're sorted by points. So Lugia has earned the most points in tournaments. Maybe I just want to pick the best deck. And right now, Lugia is arguably one of the best decks. So I can go ahead and click Lugia. And then I can find a deck list that did really well. And I can go ahead and say, ooh, I want, this Tord Reklov, one of the best players in the world. He came in 4th at a tournament recently, right? We can see the date, March 18, 2023. So we can say, okay, well, let's take a look at this deck. We go ahead, click it, and here's the exact list. The exact 60 cards that Tord used. We can look through all of them. We can, gives us kind of prices for the cards. And yeah, that's one way of finding a deck. This is called net decking, and there is nothing wrong with net decking. And all net decking means is to go online, search for a deck, and copy the exact 60 cards and play that. Perfectly valid way to find a deck. Something else we can do is just kind of look through this list for inspiration. Maybe there's a particular Pokemon or a Pokemon type that I really like playing. I really like dragon type Pokemon. So I can look through this list for anything that has a dragon Pokemon. Well, we got Hisuian Gudra, we have Duraludon, we have Giratina, we have a few different dragon Pokemon. Yes, Rayquaza is here. It is a dragon type, but in this particular Rayquaza is not a dragon type in the card game. It's a normal type to represent its flying type. Remember, right? Rayquaza's dual dragon flying. So this one's a normal type to show the flying type. But you can still say, hey, it's a dragon type, right? So if you really like Rayquaza, you can go ahead and pick this deck. So we can kind of scroll through this list to get some inspiration on what people are being played, what cards are available to us. If you're looking for cards that have specific effects, you can head to the Pokemon website and do a search by clicking the trading card game in the top banner. From there, we're just going to scroll down to trading card database. We can click that, and now we can do a search. We can enter a particular card name, card text, we can search for different types of Pokemon, and we even have this advanced search where we can look for different formats or specific expansions. I would suggest looking at standard legal if that's what you plan on playing. You want to go to a League Cup, League Challenge. Most of your locals are going to be standard legal. Regionals are standard regionals, all that standard legal, all that. So I want to do a search for a card that accelerates energies. I want something that attaches energy. So I'm going to, in the card text box, I'm going to type attach. Maybe I can narrow this down and find a water Pokemon that does this. I can then scroll down to, say, the different expansions, and I can find specific expansions. I only want the ones that are standard legal, so I'm going to go ahead and remove all the ones that are leaving post-rotation. Yes, there is a format, standard legal. However, at the moment, this is right before rotation happens, so I only want to show the stuff that is going to survive post-rotation. Then I can, even if I wanted to, I can choose other different types of, I have different categories, different searches that I can make from here. But I think for now, the expansion, water, attach is enough to get things started. Now, these are all the different cards that have attach in them. Something like King or VMAX that allows me to use Bubble Galore to search a deck for up to 5 water energies and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like. So maybe that's just an example of something I could use as an energy accelerator. Yes, I'm suddenly wearing different clothes. I forgot to mention one part and remembered while editing, so here we are. I want to talk very briefly about staple cards. Staples are things that, they hold pieces of paper together. Staples are cards that are present in almost every deck, usually in a pretty high quantity. I'm going to put up on the screen in the video description some common examples of staple cards that you could you could find right now. However, in the future, these cards may not be legal for play. They might not be good anymore. It's a little hard to say. So in an effort to make this video relatively timeless, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but what you can do is you can go to Limitless, look at some of the decks, and see what are some common cards, what are some of the things that you see all the time. And right now, you're going to see things like Ultra Ball. You're going to see a lot of Professor's Research, Boss's Orders, and a few more that I elected to put up on the screen. So, yeah, there's your little section about staple cards. Another really important thing is getting the ratio of Pokemon to trainers to energies. And it really does vary by deck. You can have a deck like Mew VMAX that has 4 energies in it, or you can have a deck like Lugia V-Star that has sometimes up to 16 energies in it. It really, really depends on your individual deck. But really, you can have some general rules or guidelines. Normally, 15 to 20 Pokemon. You have about 25 to 35 trainers and roughly 10 to 15 energies. Those are just very, very basic guidelines to kind of get you started. What I would do is go to the rest of this video, and I'll talk about picking a Pokemon and all that kind of stuff. Pick the Pokemon you want, you'll be able to then fill out some of the staples, you'll be able to get some support Pokemon, and then you can start putting in some energies that you feel you need to make your attackers work. Then you'll have a little bit of space left over, and you can kind of just start to fill in, and really the objective is to play test. Play the deck, try it out, and then be objective about how it performed. Did you have way too many energies? You played 10 games, and every game you were just flooded with energies. Take some out. Did you play a couple of games and you just couldn't find enough energies to get your attacks going? You don't have enough energies, or you don't have enough ways to accelerate those energies. It could be one or the other, right? Playing the deck is the best way to understand how it's functioning and what to change. The rest of this video is just going to take you through kind of some concepts and ideas to keep in mind about deck building. So now the question becomes, what makes these decks so good? Well, the answer is consistency and energy acceleration. Consistency can be achieved in one of two ways, and just to define consistency, it's the ability to set up your win condition often and quickly. Different decks will have different win conditions or different ways of achieving those win conditions. For the most part, most decks will, their win condition, the way they win the game is by knocking out Pokemon, taking prize cards. That's the most common way to win the game. There are some decks that win by stalling or milling, but we're not going to talk about those right now. Milling, by the way, is just the act of discarding cards from the top of your opponent's deck so that eventually they have no more cards, and when you start your turn and are unable to draw a card from your deck, you lose the game. So there are decks that's their win condition, but we're not focusing on those because those are a little bit harder to build and require a little bit more knowledge, and this is, like I said, a beginner level guide. So consistency can be achieved in one of two ways. You have search power and draw power, and those do exactly what they sound like they do. Search power lets you search directly for a card, whereas draw power just lets you draw cards off the top of your deck. Decks usually have both search and draw options, but some are better at those than others. For example, Mew decks have incredible draw power thanks to the ability of Genesect V, which lets you draw until you have equal number of cards in your hand as you do Fusion Strike Pokemon in play. The next major concept is energy acceleration. Energy acceleration is what we call getting a lot of energies attached to your Pokemon quickly. As a reminder, you can only attach a single energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon each turn. Having some type of ability or effect that lets you flood the board with energies is really important to maintaining a fast tempo so you can get energies onto your Pokemon and attack quickly. Keep these concepts of consistency and energy acceleration in mind when we start building a deck, and we're going to do that right now. The first thing we do is choose a Pokemon. This can be a Pokemon that we really like, it could be a type, it could be one that's just doing really well, whatever it is. It could be brand new. It doesn't matter why you choose a Pokemon, just choose one. From there, I split my Pokemon into three categories. You have main attackers, or like main utility Pokemon, secondary attackers, and support Pokemon. The main attacker is the Pokemon I'm going to have out no matter what. It doesn't matter what I'm playing against. My main attacker or my main utility Pokemon is the thing that makes the deck function. For example, these could be Pokemon like Arceus V-Star, Lugia V-Star, or Gardevoir EX. These are Pokemon that in almost every circumstance, you want that Pokemon out on the field so it can do something very central to your deck's idea. It also just happens to be that all three Pokemon that I just mentioned are energy accelerators. They also, not only are they good attackers, but they also help you get energy into play. Arceus, you attack and you get energies. Lugia uses its ability to put Archeops in play, which then gets energies into play. And Gardevoir has an ability that lets you get energies from your discard onto your Pokemon. So not only are these good attackers, but they're energy accelerators, which is why I need them in play no matter what I'm playing against. Because again, a main core concept of deck building is a way to get energies into play quickly and easily. Secondary attackers are Pokemon that are really useful attackers, but only in certain situations. For example, in Lugia decks, we have Stoutland V, which isn't always something we want to use, but against certain decks, it can be really, really valuable in making it easier for us to take all 6 prizes and win the game. Support Pokemon have effects or abilities that really assist in your game plan. Lumineon V, when you play it from your hand to the bench, searches your deck for a supporter card and puts it into your hand. This is great if you have very few or not very good cards in your hand. You can search your deck for a powerful draw support card like Professor's Research. We also have support Pokemon like Archeops that accelerate energy to other Pokemon in play, or Manaphy that protects our bench Pokemon from damage. It's worth noting that support Pokemon and secondary attackers, they often overlap, and that Lumineon can be a good secondary attacker, Archeops is a good secondary attacker, and there have been people who have won games using the attack on a Manaphy. It's not a great secondary attacker, but it can attack nonetheless. So these roles are a little bit fluid, and don't get too bogged down in the details of categorizing main, secondary support. These are just kind of helpful guidelines. When it comes to trainer cards, we have two types, and this is a mentality that I got from Todd Reclev. I've worked with him, he's coached me, he's helped, I've seen interviews that he's done, and this is something that he really discusses and I think is a fantastic way of thinking about how to add cards to your deck. And we have consistency cards and power cards. Consistency cards are things like Ultra Ball and Professor's Research, things that really help you find the pieces you need to implement your game plan, get an attack going, or whatever it is you need to do. Cards like Choice Belt and Boss's Orders are power cards. They aren't needed to make your deck strategy work, they just help you win the game a little bit easier. The last topic is tech cards. These are cards that aren't needed to make your deck strategy work, but they are really helpful in improving your matchup to a specific deck. For example, if your deck loses to Mew VMAX a lot, you may want to consider adding a Drapion V, a Pokemon that counters Mew into oblivion. Techs are not permanent inclusions to a deck. For example, a tech is only useful if the deck that it works against is popular enough to make it worth it. If there's only 10 people playing a particular deck at a 1,200 person tournament, it's not worth teching against that deck because the odds that you run into it is really low. Finally, where do we actually get cards? Once we have an idea of what we want to play, where do we buy them? Well, the easy answer is TCG Player if you're in the US, and Card Market if you're in the UK, or just Europe, I guess. You can also I personally buy things from eBay all the time. I've bought cards from Mercari before. You're taking a little bit of a gamble when you buy from, things like eBay and Mercari, but I also do just quickly want to mention that when you do go to a tournament, your deck has to be in sleeves. So buy sleeves and put those cards in there because you're going to spend this money. You don't want to have your cards destroyed because the table's gross or something spills or something happens to your cards. Protect your cards, and also you need them for tournaments because it's a rule to help protect against more cards. So there you go. And there we have it, a very concept-based deck building guide. I don't want to give too many examples of cards to use right now because cards come and go. What we're using in decks right now might not be the same as what we're using in decks a year, 2, 5 years from now, whatever it is. And I want this video to kind of be timeless. The cards I used as examples are simply that, examples. So I hope this helped. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. And that's going to do it for us today. Thanks so much, and I will see you next time.